Oh God, open up my eyes. In Sarah Jakes Roberts' empowering, heartfelt style, you ever been in a place where everything looked fine, but something in your spirit whispered, this isn't it? You ever smiled in a room full of people but felt like no one could see the real you? I've been there. I've stood in front of mirrors, dressing up brokenness with confidence and praying no one would see through the layers. I've walked paths that looked like destiny but felt like detours. And somewhere in that tension, that ache between who I was and who I was becoming, I whispered one simple prayer. Open up my eyes. Open up my eyes to the truth I keep avoiding. To the pain I've buried under busy schedules and fake smiles. To the potential I've been too afraid to own. To the power I've always had but never believed belonged to me. See, when your eyes open, not just your physical eyes, but the eyes of your soul, your entire life begins to shift. The places you once begged to stay in, you now feel bold enough to leave. The people you thought validated you realize no longer deserve front row seats to your healing. Opening your eyes doesn't always feel like clarity. Sometimes it feels like chaos. Because once you see, you can't unsee. Once you know, you can't pretend you don't. And once you awaken, you'll never again be satisfied with sleeping through your purpose. You'll start walking different, loving different, choosing different. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you've seen something. You've seen you, the real you, the redeemed you. In that version of you, she's ready to rise. She's not asking for permission. She's not waiting for approval. She's not shrinking for the sake of comfort. She's awake now. So if you feel lost, if you feel stuck, if you feel like there's got to be more, this is your moment. Whisper it if you have to. Shout it if you need to. Cry it if that's where you are, but say it with your whole soul. Open up my eyes. You don't really wake up in peace. Not the kind of waking that changes you. The kind that shakes you, pulls you out of your norm, and confronts you with who you've been pretending to be. That awakening? It doesn't come with a warm hug or a gentle breeze. It shows up in the form of heartbreak, frustration, isolation, or an internal war you can't quite name. Discomfort becomes the divine tool, not to destroy you, but to disrupt the illusion that everything is okay. Because growth never begins in stillness. It begins when something hurts enough to make you move. See, we don't like discomfort. We pray it away, numb it, busy ourselves so we don't have to feel it. But discomfort is the midwife to destiny. It's the voice that whispers, this version of you isn't the final cut. It's not always loud, but it's relentless. It shows up in conversations that don't sit right, in relationships that don't fit anymore, in careers that pay the bills but bankrupt your joy. That ache you feel in your chest, that's not weakness, that's awakening. And if you're honest, you felt it for a while now. You can't ignore it forever. You can distract yourself with new routines, fresh goals, or even spiritual language. But discomfort won't leave just because you pretend it's not there. It's like a fire under your feet, daring you to move, daring you to confront the version of yourself you've outgrown. You ever notice how the very things that used to satisfy you now leave you feeling empty? That's no coincidence. That's your soul signaling that it's time to shed the skin of your past season. But here's the tension. We often confuse discomfort with failure. We think if something hurts, it must be wrong. But what if it's not wrong? What if it's real? What if pain is simply purpose knocking on the door of your comfort zone? We've been taught to equate success with ease, but the truth is evolution is messy. Becoming isn't cute. There are tears, late nights, anxiety attacks, and silent prayers in parking lots. But buried in that mess is the version of you you've been asking for. And she only rises when the old you is forced to sit down. Discomfort peels away false identities. It confronts the lies you believe just to survive. It tells you you don't have to shrink to be accepted anymore. It calls out your hiding places, the fake laughs, the people-pleasing, the hustle for validation. And slowly, without warning, it begins to open your eyes. Not just to the world around you, but to the war within. That's the real awakening. When you can no longer blame your pain on people or places, and you're left face to face with yourself. And that moment, that's sacred ground. Not because it's pretty, but because it's true. You're stripped bare and vulnerable, but also unburdened. You're not carrying masks anymore. You're not performing. And in that discomfort, something is reborn. A new lens, a deeper hunger, a raw courage that can't be taught, only birthed through fire. You begin to ask different questions. Not a how can I escape this, but a what is this trying to show me? This is the place where power begins, not in the boardroom, not on the platform, but in the bedroom at 2 a.m. when you're curled up, asking yourself, is this all there is? It's the holy chaos before clarity. And yes, it feels like falling apart. But baby, sometimes things fall apart so the truth can finally fit. So let it unravel. Let the discomfort do its work. Because what feels like a breakdown may actually be the breakthrough you prayed for in another language. In another language. So if you're in that space, the messy, uncomfortable, not sure who you are anymore space, don't run. Don't run. Don't shut down. Lean in. This is not the end of you. It's the shaking before the shifting. The undoing before the unveiling. The discomfort you feel right now, that's your soul waking up. Sight is more than what your eyes can catch in the natural. There's a deeper vision, one that cuts through the surface of a moment and exposes what's really happening beneath it. The kind of sight that doesn't just see people, places, or problems, but sees patterns. That's spiritual sight. That's spiritual sight. And it's not always glamorous. It's not always something you want. Because the moment your spiritual eyes open, you stop being able to lie to yourself. You can't unsee what you've now seen clearly. And that truth, it comes with weight. When spiritual sight begins to stir, you start realizing that maybe it wasn't the world that was lying to you. Maybe you were lying to yourself. Maybe that relationship you were fighting to keep alive was actually suffocating the real you. Maybe that opportunity you cried over losing wasn't rejection. It was redirection. Spiritual sight teaches you to read between the lines of your own story. It's less about looking outward and more about looking inward. Because half the battle is realizing that the biggest obstacle wasn't a them, it was you. It's humbling when your eyes open and you realize how many red flags you ignored because you wanted the dream so bad. How many times you chose silence over boundaries, survival over healing, appearance over authenticity. And you didn't do it because you were weak. You did it because you didn't know better. You were still seeing life through survival-tinted lenses. But when your spiritual vision kicks in, you begin to crave more than safety. You start craving truth. And truth, even when it's painful, becomes the only thing that satisfies. The thing about truth is that it doesn't just reveal what's wrong, it also reveals what's right. It shows you the light that's always been in you, the strength you ignored, the fire you buried, the voice you silenced because you didn't want to seem a too much. You start to see that you were never too much. You were just surrounded by people who weren't enough to carry your calling. And suddenly you stop shrinking. You stop settling because spiritual sight doesn't let you live small anymore. But this new vision also costs you something. It costs you denial. It costs you comfort. It costs you the luxury of staying asleep in a world that profits off your blindness. You begin to question things, why you stayed in rooms that made you feel invisible, why you built your life around someone else's approval, why you called dysfunction normal. Your vision becomes a mirror, and it doesn't always flatter, but it frees. Because once you truly see, your excuses start sounding different in your own ears. It's a hard truth. Some people would rather stay blind than deal with the responsibility that comes with seeing, because seeing forces decisions. It demands accountability, and it puts the power back in your hands. You can't keep blaming your past when you realize you're the one choosing to replay it. You can't keep asking for peace while tolerating chaos. Spiritual sight says, and now that you know, what are you going to do? That question will haunt you in the best way. It will stretch you beyond survival into purpose. And once your inner vision sharpens, even your prayers change. You stop asking for things to change around you and start asking for change within you and start asking for change within you. You stop begging for closed doors to open and start thanking them for protecting you. You stop looking for a sign and start being one. Because spiritual sight doesn't just teach you how to see life, it teaches you how to see yourself differently. Not through the lens of pain or shame or regret, but through the lens of becoming. That's where the shift happens, when you no longer define yourself by your wounds, but by your willingness to heal. When your identity stops being shaped by who left and starts being shaped by who stayed, you. That version of you that refused to stay blind. That version of you that chose truth over comfort, clarity over chaos. She's not a fantasy. She's real. And now that your eyes are open, nothing will ever be the same. We don't always know what we're really praying for. We think we're asking for peace, but what we're really asking for is for nothing to hurt. We think we're asking for direction, but what we're really asking for is for the path to be easy. So often we come into prayer begging for comfort. Not the kind of honesty you offer to impress people or earn vulnerability points. No, this is the hard honesty. Do you look in the mirror and don't flinch a kind? Do you sit with your truth without trying to edit it kind? Because seeing clearly means you stop justifying the decisions that keep you bound. The ones you dreamed would be there with you. The ones who were good to you in the last season but can't see you clearly in this one. And that stings. Because it feels like abandonment, but it's actually alignment. It's wild how growth makes your circle shrink. How clarity makes conversations awkward. How healing makes shared trauma stop feeling like connection. You used to laugh together, cry together, gossip together. But now you're craving something deeper, something more, something real. And when you stop feeding dysfunction, people who were addicted to your brokenness start calling you distant. But you're not cold, you're just becoming. And becoming will cost you who you were, and sometimes who you were with. Here's the truth we avoid: everyone can't go. Not because they're bad, but because their presence delays your progress. You were trying to carry people who were never meant to climb. You were trying to drag someone into a room they had no capacity to honor. And when you live like that, you begin to betray your own anointing just to keep someone else comfortable. But eventually, the weight becomes too heavy, the tension too obvious, the assignment too loud to ignore. So you separate, but it doesn't feel spiritual at first. It feels like loss, like grief with familiarity, like betrayal. You start asking yourself, did I do something wrong? And maybe you didn't. Maybe you just did something right. Maybe you chose to grow, to heal, to rise. And your elevation was their exposure, not to who they are, but to how much you've changed. Because elevation exposes comfort. It reveals who was clapping for the old you, but can't handle the new you. That kind of silence can be deafening. And if you're not careful, the enemy will use that silence to plant doubt. See? You're not lovable. Oh, too much now. You're better off going back. But hear me. Don't confuse divine separation with emotional abandonment. This isn't rejection. It's redirection. You're not being pushed out of the crowd to be punished. You're being set apart for purpose. God isn't isolating you. He's insulating you, preparing you, positioning you for something that doesn't require noise, just obedience. And no, it doesn't always feel good. Sometimes you'll sit in rooms you once begged to be in and feel out of place. Sometimes you'll miss the comfort of familiarity, even when it was dysfunctional. Sometimes you'll replay the old conversations, the inside jokes, the shared memories, and you'll wonder if it was all in your head. But don't let nostalgia keep you from your next. Separation hurts, but staying stuck hurts worse. And purpose is too precious to keep sacrificing. You can have 20/20 vision and still not see. Spiritual blindness is subtle. It's not always rebellion. Sometimes it's distraction. Sometimes it's going through the motions of faith without ever asking if your heart is really in it. It's knowing the scriptures but missing the spirit.